Alright, this is a video on Command 1. This is part 2 of how to lead this particular Bible study. Now, in part 1 I talked about each component and how to lead it. Now I'm going to highlight some areas that are very important. First thing is, when you start the Bible study, you're going to read the command, and generally speaking you read it right down here. If we were to redo these Bible studies, I would make sure that this command was included right here so that you don't forget it. So make sure you do that. Now, as we look at the entire Bible study, what we see is three parts. The first third is looking back. The second third is looking up. And then you have the final third of looking ahead. And each third has different components in it that are really important. So in the first third, looking back, the first thing you have is member care. And like I said, the easiest way to do this is just spend the first 10 minutes of people mingling and being in discussion and conversation, asking one another how they're doing. It's very awkward if you go around the circle and say, "How are you doing?" and it's just very mechanical. If you just do it in the group, it's very organic. The second part of first third is worship and prayer. Now, some groups just pray, some groups read a psalm, some groups sing. It's just really up to you, whatever you want to do. Now, this part of the first third, loving accountability, is where we talk about the application or the goal from last week. So in your first Bible study, you're not going to have any goals from last week because you didn't have a Bible study last week. But every other time after that, you'll always ask, how did the goal go from last week that you set? And then vision casting. Now, we're trying to do two things in vision casting. One is set the DNA for the group. It's Jesus up in and out. It's a holistic look at the Christian life or living in the kingdom. So we help people understand what Jesus up in and out means, and we go through it every time. And it would be good to delegate this out as quickly as possible so that people can start to practice it in the group. So you lead it the first couple of times, and then after that, assign it to others to lead. See who wants to lead it. Now, the multiplication strategy is just the way that the movement goes, is started because people take responsibility for the ministry and they begin to share these lessons with their friends, family, and co-workers, their relational network. And there's different ways to do this, but one of the ways to do it is just quote the Great Commission and talk about multiplying the group every single time. And repetition will help people get this. Eventually, it will become part of their lifestyle. We come to the second third of looking up. This is our new discussion. And like we said, we tell the story, we read the story, we summarize the story. That way they hear the story 3 times. When you help people prepare to tell the story, first off, I would tell the story as the facilitator the first time. You don't want to memorize the passage. You just want to get the basic scenes that are happening in the passage and tell it in your own words. And read the story a couple of times and then practice telling the story in your own words. That's how you help people prepare for this. And then reading it is pretty simple. Summary, it's really short. Like here would be a summary of the demoniac. Well, Jesus comes across the sea, finds this guy full of demons. He casts them out. They go into some pigs, and then the guys that herded the pigs freak out, go back to town, and everybody's afraid, and the demoniac wants to go with Jesus, but Jesus sends him back to his hometown to tell him the good things that the Lord had done for him. So that's a really abbreviated form of the story. And then in head, you're trying to help people just discuss what they learned. These are just observations from the story. Emotions, a lot of people like to skip the emotions, but we find that this is probably one of the most important parts of the story to help people put themselves into shoes of the characters of the story. And so we just walk through the different characters in the story and how they may have felt, what kind of emotions that they were feeling at any particular time in the story. And then hands is, what are you going to do about it? Now you notice that there are some leading questions under each section. In every Bible study we've done this. We've given you some leading questions to help new leaders if they don't know how to ask good questions. These are recommended questions that help them lead this Bible study quickly. You notice that the Bible study is really simple. Tell it, read it, summarize, head, heart, and hands. We have seen brand new baby Christians lead this within 4 weeks of coming to Christ. So it's pretty simple. The final third is always built with practice and then goal setting and prayer. That's the final third. Practice is usually practicing something that they learned. For instance, in Command 1, it's how to do their testimony. Command 2 will be share the gospel. Command 3 will be baptized. So it's usually something that they have learned in the lesson. But sometimes as you get further on down the road in discipleship, you'll just review some of the common things like share the gospel, share your testimony, share the 4 fields, baptize people, talk about what church is. So you'll practice these every week, and when you do them week in, week out, people get very, very proficient at doing them. Just a couple of notes on the 1-1-1. One story, 1 minute, one question. You notice that I talked about 2 words that would describe your life before Christ, 2 words that would describe your life after Christ. We have found that that's the quickest and most effective way to help people tell their story in a minute or less. Usually writing it out on paper, the story gets kind of long. So just 2 words before, 2 words after, and they just form their story around those 2 sets of words, and it's pretty easy. What you have to look for, though, in this is that they have a clear presentation of the gospel right in the middle of their story. That Jesus came to die for their sins, that they received his forgiveness, they repented from their sins, turned towards Jesus, and then they served him as their king, master, or boss. So that's really important that the gospel is put in their story. So their story has a before, a during, and an after. Now you'll notice the 3-chair method down here. It's just a technique. People move from chair to chair. You set up 3 chairs. First chair is before, the middle chair is during, and the last chair is after. And they just move from chair to chair. It's just a technique to help them compartmentalize those 3 stages of the story. You don't have to do it, but sometimes it's helpful. The question at the end is always to solicit a response to your story. One of the weakest parts of evangelism is people tell people about Jesus, but they don't tell them how to receive him or how to enter the kingdom of God. So that's what the question, the one question, is designed to do, to elicit response. And then lastly, goal setting. We try to set up in and out goals, and so some of the goals are assigned and some of the goals they come up with on their own. But every week we want people to have goals. Now if people resist numbers and goals and things like this, tell them to pray and ask Jesus what he would like them to do, and then just hold them accountable to whatever Jesus tells them. So that's a way that we work this. All right, so that's part 1 and part 2 of how to teach the first command. I hope that's clear. If it's not, just comment or write me back and we'll try to help you out the best you can. You can find these Bible studies. They're posted in the comments section with a link, or you can go to www.juio.net.